Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. Happy February. I'm super excited for today's video because I'm going to be sharing with you essentially my palette inspiration as well as my single shadow inspiration for the month of February. I have 12 eyeshadow palettes pulled out that I am hoping to get some use out of in the month of love, as well as some single shadows that I have curated that I want to try and get use out of. And then at the end of the video, I will also share with you my curated Natasha Denona midi palette for the month. Every single month this year, I am curating a Natasha Denona midi palette where I take these singles out of all my Natasha Denona shadows and then curate a palette that's kind of giving me inspiration for that given month. If you are interested in what palettes I ended up using from my January rotation, catch my monthly palette ranking. I believe that video will be going up after this, so keep an eye out for that if you want to see what I ended up using out of the things that I curated for January. But I'm very excited to share with you all of the mostly pink palettes that I pulled out to get use out of in the month of February. If you're excited, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content, palette themed content, or just chit chatting about makeup, I'd love if you'd consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. I pulled out the Lawless Fade the Filler in Juicy Watermelon because I thought the hot pink would kind of like match the vibe. And we already know how much I love Lawless Fade the Filler, but I'm like, dang, I forgot how much I love Juicy Watermelon. And I know that was a limited edition shade, but I'm wondering if it's still available. Like, do I need to order a backup? Possibly. Okay, you guys, there are so many cute eyeshadow palettes that are either have come out or coming out for Valentine's Day. And I will say I'm getting more into like holiday palettes. Like I was really into all of the Halloween palette releases. I thought there were so many fun ones. There is specifically a Bella Beauté bar palette that released that I think is so beautiful. So I may end up picking up some of the Valentine's themed palettes as well. But these are all palettes that have been in my collection for a bit. So I feel like I was mostly trying to choose pink palettes, and I actually feel like I almost struggled to pull out. I was looking for like 10 to 12 palettes. I actually feel like I almost struggled a little bit to pull these palettes out, but I have a bunch of palettes. Like I have a bunch of brands in twos. Like I have 2 Natasha Denona minis, 2 of my Rowan quads, 2 of my Pat palettes. So let's just start with these 2 right here. So I have 2 Natasha Denona mini palettes that I will be pulling out, and as mentioned at the introduction, I'm also pulling out or curating a Natasha Denona midi palette. But we have the Natasha Denona Love palette that came out. This was like her Valentine's launch in like 2021, I believe. I absolutely love this shade right here for an inner corner highlight, but I'm hoping to maybe no pan left behind this throughout February. I feel like that would be like the perfect month to no pan left behind this palette. Check that one off the list of palettes that are no pan left behind it. And if you don't know what no pan left behind is, it means I use every single shade in the palette at least once before I roll it out. So this I'm pulling in. And then also for something a little bit more like soft and romantic, I'm pulling in the Natasha Denona mini retro palette. I think you can create such a beautiful soft romantic look from this palette using just this matte shade right here and then the shade Galaxia with like a winged liner. I am definitely doing that look throughout this month and I'm so excited about it. But I'm also hoping, because I'll already have this palette pulled to get use out of, I would also like to no pan left behind this one this month. I'm also pulling 2 of my Rowan quads plus my 75 degrees quad. I'm trying to pan in my Rolling Project 10 pan. But we have the 1111 quad, which I think will pair so beautifully with the Natasha Denona mini Zendo palette. I think that's going to be such a beautiful combo. Again, this is giving like soft romantic vibes for February, and I'm just all about it. We know how much I love this shade right here, but I also think this will be such a perfect shade for February, so I'm pulling that, as well as my Mood Forever palette. I actually just no pan left behind it this palette in that series in January, and I absolutely love this palette. I think it's so beautiful, and I think these 2 shades right here are gonna just be absolutely stunning for, again, the reds and the pinks that I am gonna be inspired by this month. So pulling these 2. I'm also gonna be pulling from Pat McGrath my Voyeuristic Vixen quad. I feel like this is the perfect time to get use out of this. I'm also hoping maybe I could check so many little mini palettes off of my No Pan Left Behind list in the month of February, but I mean, we definitely need to get use out of this very sparkly, beautiful shade right there. And yeah, while I have it pulled, I would just like to maybe try and create one look with just using this quad. We'll see. Also, we'll be pulling the Juvia's Place The Pinks palette. I already know I'm for sure going to be doing nail polish with eyeshadow using this shade right here. It is probably my favorite eyeshadow as nail polish in my entire collection. I love how just pink and metallic it is. So I will definitely be doing that this month, but then I'm hoping to create just a fun, very vibrant pink look throughout the month of February with this palette as well. I also thought it would be the perfect month to pull in my Glaminatrix Cosmetics Rich Romantic palette. This one is like romantic with a fun twist. I love like the bright purples that we have. I love this coral peachy matte shade. I think it's so beautiful. Then we also have some pinks up here, some more like, I'm gonna say like princess pinks, and then we have so many fun shifty shades throughout this palette. You guys know I fell in love with Glaminatrix last year, so I'm very excited to just pull their palette out and get use out of it. There's some greens in here too, so maybe as we're nearing the end of February and entering March, we can have some fun with the greens. Not that I can't have fun with greens anytime throughout the month of February, but just kind of thinking through that. So that one I will be pulling, as well as the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette. I just think this palette, out of just about every palette in my collection, screams February, romantic, just ethereal, beautiful, soft looks, but also you can go deep. You can go deep as well. I pulled this into my No Pan Left Behind last year in the month of February and just had so much fun creating looks using this palette. I am just already so excited to have this palette out and at the forefront of my mind and just creating some fun looks with this. I love this palette so much. So that one's gonna be getting a ton of use in February. And then I thought I would pull out the Mercury Retrograde palette alongside that. Yes, this one has some colorful shades in it, but I feel like this, like these 6 shades right here, I feel like are perfect for the pinks and like the February shades. Also, as we, you know, near, I know these are more like blues rather than greens, but you know, this palette just does not get enough love for me, especially considering it is getting older. I would love to have more than just the one pan in this palette. Like I would love to hit another pan in this palette before the end of the year. So I love the shade Supernova as well for like a really beautiful metallic, kind of like pink to red to gold shade. I think that'll be really pretty this month. So I will also be pulling Huda Mercury Retrograde. I have 2 Mothership palettes that I'm pulling. I decided I want to pull in the, is this the Rose Decadence, like the original? I never know. But this isn't necessarily like a pink palette, but we're still in winter here in Minnesota. Usually February ends up being the coldest month out of all the months in winter. And these are really tones that I am inspired by in the winter season. I also felt like maybe I want to do like a pink look with a pop of like a really, really beautiful sparkly champagne lid topper. I thought that would be really fun. And I haven't played around much with this like special shifty shade in here, which I felt like because it has like a pink to gold shift, I felt like that could be really pretty as I'm trying to do more pink looks in February. So I will be pulling Divine Rose as well as the Utopian palette, and the Utopian palette definitely screams more pink than the Divine Rose. I also will probably pull this palette out maybe in like June because I feel like this shade is just so beautiful for that time of year. But there's some fun, very sparkly shades in the Utopian palette, as well as I love this pink metallic, like very metallic shade. I just think I can have some fun with the Utopian this month as well. And then the 12th and final palette that I'll be pulling before we get into the Natasha Denona custom palette is the Adept Cosmetics Ninhydrin palette. And this isn't necessarily like a pink palette, but I thought that this would be fun. Like I want to also focus on some of my more like all shimmer or close to all shimmer palettes, just to really focus on getting more use out of them. There's some fun, really beautiful metallic or duochrome pink shades in this palette, or duochrome, even like pink to purple to like gold multi-chrome. Really beautiful shades that I can, you know, get use out of if I'm wanting to do pink looks in February. But also there's just these really beautiful greens and teals and purples and blues and I just want to get more use out of this palette. Like, this palette is so gorgeous. It deserves even more love. So I'm going to be pulling this one. We can now cut over to me curating my Natasha Denona custom palette for the month. Sorry for the quick jump scare here, you guys. I know I told you guys that I was going to be like taking you alongside me to do the process of creating my own Natasha Denona custom palette. But I am currently working on a new series. It's going to be a color series video, basically swatching all of the eyeshadows in my collection of a certain color. So my desk is so messy right now. I really didn't have space, like a good space to create or to like film creating. I actually am doing 2 Natasha custom palettes for the month of February. So I created these without filming it, but I promise going forward, I will take you alongside the process. Check out my Instagram. I will post a post that has each of these posted with the swatches and like the names of each shadow and what palette they came from. I believe I'm going to be posting this video on Saturday, January 27th. And I plan to have my Instagram post go up tomorrow on the 28th. So sorry for the delay there. I'm sorry I didn't take you alongside the process, but I really want to get this video up, and it's going to take me a couple days, I've realized, to film this other color series video, and I just like don't have the space. So anyway, I will have swatches of each of these, and actually, so I had planned to create my palette in like the Love palette, and I had pulled out also the Sunrise palette, and when I opened it up, like this row was already this row of shades just from like, it was just like slapped in there from like the last time I created palettes, just kind of tossing my singles in haphazardly. And there was also like these 2 shades were haphazardly thrown into this palette. And then I was getting like these like grungy, almost like army green and pink sort of vibes with like a mix of purple. So this palette kind of happened just like on its own. I had all of my Natasha midi palettes kind of pulled out, and I was like, I think I want to go for like almost like pink and army green. Who remembers like back in the 90s when there was like pink and green camo? So kind of going for like that grungy vibe with a bit of purple mixed in, and that is how this palette came to come about. I'm going to be very curious to see if I actually end up using this palette and how frequently I end up using it. I actually ended up using my January custom palette more than I expected to. So we'll see what happens with this one. I was only planning to do 1 custom palette, but then I wanted to do just like your standard everyday, like custom Valentine's palette, and typically I would actually have more of a ratio of like shimmers to mattes be even, and this is more matte heavy with just like the top row of shimmers, with the exception of this like cream to powder shade down here. But this is what I have for my Natasha Denona Love palette, Love custom palette. It is mostly just like matte pinks and reds, like true, like when I think of like Valentine's Day, true pinks and reds, true to that color, with some shimmers up top to go alongside it. And I'll be curious to see what we end up creating throughout the month of February. I feel like I already am missing blues. I had so much fun playing around with blue shadow. I feel like blue eyeshadow is like my favorite eyeshadow now, which is crazy because I used to be most scared of blue. And I always say, like, I don't really like pinks that much, especially like a bright, vibrant pink. But I feel like I've been seeing some inspiration lately, and I'm excited to create some things. But that being said, these are my 2 Natasha Denona custom palettes. And that is really going to wrap it up for today's video, chatting through all of my February palette inspiration. Would love to know in the comments below what palettes are you going to be drawing inspiration from in February. Do you do your makeup by the season? I didn't used to, but I will say more and more I'm having fun creating looks based on the season. But that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch. Again, let me know what palettes you're most inspired by for this season. I did pick up the Bella Beauté Bar Dead Roses palette yesterday. I'm so freaking excited for that to arrive to me, and that is something I will definitely be reaching for throughout the month of February as well. I wasn't as inspired as some of the other Valentine's palettes that I've seen. I'm still thinking about the Unearthly mystery box, but it's expensive and I feel like I only really want a palette, and so fingers crossed, maybe if it is a palette they'll sell it separately at some point in time. But I would love to know, what palettes are you picking up for the season? What are you grabbing from your collection? Let a girl know in the comments below. Other than that, thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch today's video, for supporting me and my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.